Hello and welcome to this video in which we will be talking about demystifying organic certification, doing a general overview of the National Organic Program regulations as well as the certification process. My name is Meredith Morgan. I am the Service and Support Manager here at Quality Certification Services. QCS is an accredited certification body. So to give an idea, these are some of the contents of what we're going to be discussing today. Really trying to give as broad of an overview as we possibly can of kind of everything that you'll need to know to be successful with certification. So to start here, in the world of certification, acronyms are very common and often can be quite confusing to folks that are newer to this. So these are some really common acronyms you may hear, especially NOP, which is the National Organic Program, OSP, the Organic System Plan, etc. So this is a really great place to kind of come back to if you're getting lost in the jargon of certification. To start here, we are going to be starting at the very top. This is the National Organic Program is part of the Code of Federal Regulations. It is in Section 7, Part 205. And this is also called the regulation, which to me always sounds like a superhero. So this is the section of the Code of Federal Regulations that covers all aspects of organic production, anything that you would need to be compliant with the Organic Production Act. And really quickly, I want to touch on this term compliant. So when we are doing our work as a certifier, we focus on compliance. So a compliant organic system plan can take many different forms. Focusing on compliance is great because there isn't necessarily a right answer, like one size fits all, the right answer. Many people are very nervous, they don't want to do the wrong thing or they don't want to put the wrong answer. But if we focus on compliance, if you have an answer that is compliant with the National Organic Program regulation, then it is the right answer. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on that. We're focusing on compliance. That's what we as a certifier are the most concerned with. So just to give a very brief overview, these are the 5 major steps of organic certification. Starting out with creating an organic system plan, then going to the initial review, then going to the on-site inspection, followed by the final review and the certification decision. In the next slides, we're going to dive into each of these steps in greater detail. So starting at step 1, creating an organic system plan. In so many articles and things that you read, it just says, create an OSP and then talk to a certifier. So what is that? An OSP is an organic system plan. And an organic system plan, in essence, is a record of your operation. It covers all aspects of your operation from, the type of business you have, the type of records you're keeping, crops you're growing, really everything at that bird's eye view, and then digging into specifics. So in the organic system plan, we're really looking at kind of 3 big questions, which is this something that you do on your operation? If you are doing that, how are you doing it? And then lastly, do you have records to confirm those processes as things either move through your operation or you're growing or you're raising livestock, etc. So here on the side of the screen, we have just a sample page from our organic grower plan, specifically talking about crop production summary. So I like to say that organic system plans are thorough, but not complex. Many of these questions you probably already know the answer to. Again, that second thing I said, how are you doing it? That is really what we're honing in on, because the how is where we determine your compliance with those regulations. So for many of these questions, they are going to be things you know. What type of irrigation are you using? Are you using irrigation? Where are you getting your livestock feed? Who are your suppliers for your multi-ingredient product, etc. So this organic system plan then really creates the basis of the entire system of how your particular operation is compliant with organic regulations. So, step 2 in this process is the initial review. So, this is what happens once you have created your organic system plan and you have all of the documents that you need to show us that you're compliant. It will go into initial review, and that is essentially a desk audit. So, one of our reviewers, depending on what scope you're applying for, will go through your application, and what they are looking at, they're kind of going through on a fine tooth comb and basically just confirming, hey, on paper, are all of these things lining up? Do they have a plan in place to remain compliant with all these organic regulations that are necessary for their scope specifically? All right, so step 3 in this process is the inspection. So, a lot of folks, especially newer to organic certification, are very nervous about their inspection and are really worried again of that, oh my gosh, I don't want to get it wrong. But really what the inspector is there to do is to verify everything that you've written in your organic system plan. All of those things that are on paper is what's happening in practice on your operation. So they will walk your operation, they will review your records, confirm all the aspects that you've laid out in that organic system plan. And, this is definitely one of the more important aspects, because what our inspectors are there to do is get eyes on your practices. So if you say, this is how we're keeping records in your organic system plan, then at the inspection, that inspector will say, great, you said you're keeping records in this way. Show me how that's happening. Show me those records, walk me through it. So it's definitely, hopefully, less of a scary thing and more of a great opportunity to prove that you are doing everything you say you're doing, and that we as the certifiers have confidence because our inspector has witnessed all of those things taking place on your operation. So now once you've gone through the inspection, that inspector's inspection report, as well as your organic system plan, will go into final review. So the process of final review really is to shore up. Here's what they said they're doing on paper. Here's what our inspector witnessed them doing on site. Are those two matching up? And so this is the point where a final reviewer may reach out to you with additional questions, flag any compliance concerns that came up during inspection, etc. So this is the person, the final reviewer, who is going to be actually making a certification decision. So now we're on the last stage of certification, which is the certification decision. So once you've passed through final review and they have given you that beautiful green check mark that says, yes, you can market and sell your products as certified organic. Fantastic. Now what you will do is you're basically going to enter into an annual renewal process. It's important to note that annual means once a year, not necessarily once every 12 months. So you may not get exactly 12 months between your annual renewals, but what that allows us to do is to be able to witness your operation at a variety of stages, and hopefully we try and be reasonable with that, but just keep that in mind as well. Also, now that you are a certified organic operation, you'll want to make sure that during the year, between those renewal updates, between those renewal cycles, you are staying in touch with us and letting us know of any updates that you plan to make to your organic system plan before you implement them. So anything like changing a sanitizer or sourcing from a new supplier or adding a crop, etc. You'll want to make sure that you alert us to those things before you implement them on your operation. We always want to make sure that we have a full and accurate record of your operation as it is and as you plan to make those changes. Organic system plans are designed to be living documents. They will change as your operation changes. We just need to know before you make any of those changes. On the side here as well, you can see our annual renewal process wheel. Essentially, beyond creating the organic system plan, which you are not required to do every year, periodically we will make updates and ask for new pages. However, in general, you're going to be using that organic system plan you've already created. We'll send you renewal paperwork 90 days before your renewal is due, then 60 days, then 30 days with reminders. And then basically you'll kind of step through the same process every year of initial review, inspection, final review, and then a continuing certification if your compliance is maintained throughout the year. Now, before we move on to getting more in depth on the regulations, I wanted to give you all a few quick pointers for what makes a great organic system plan. First and foremost, answer every question. Seriously, every question. We ask those questions, again, in order to determine your compliance. So it's really important that we have a full picture of your operation in that organic system plan. Always include any attachments that are needed. This could be things like maps, record keeping templates, purchase records, sourcing records, seed sourcing, business licenses, etc. And then also always, kind of consider the totality of your operation, not just one aspect of it. So, for example, if you are raising chickens as well as doing crops, but the chickens are never going to be certified organic, great. Just, as a little, hey, we also raise chickens on this farm. We also know that, so we have, again, that total picture. What we're really digging in on in the organic system plan are the organic aspects of your operation, but we do want to have that kind of broad overview so that our reviewers can keep that in mind, so that our inspector knows what to expect when they are on your operation, etc. And last but not least, remember, for the most part, outside of your inspector, your organic system plan will be reviewed by people who are really never going to set foot on your operation. So having as much information in your organic system plan as possible really helps our reviewers make sure that they are accurately assessing every aspect of what you're doing on your operation. All right, now we are going to get into a little bit more in depth with transitional operations, as well as some scope-specific information and requirements. So starting out with transitional land, so in operation, you don't have to transition all of your land at one time. So for example, if you have 10 acres, you could start an organic transition on 1 acre and then phase more land in over time. The transition period for land specifically is 36 continuous months with no prohibited substances applied to the land. Again, 36 continuous months with no prohibited substances on the land. If your operation has had no prohibited substances for more than 36 months, and you can prove that with what's called a land use affidavit, or if the land was previously certified organic, you don't necessarily have to do a transition for the land. You just have to be able to verify there have been no prohibited substances for 36 continuous months, and then you're good to go. There are some additional transition requirements that come into play with beef and dairy operations. They're a little bit more in depth. I highly recommend reaching out to somebody at QCS if you'd like a little bit more information on that. So QCS does offer a transitional certification for crop operations specifically. Again, please reach out to us if you'd like some more information on that. There is also a massive undertaking by the USDA called the Organic Transition Initiative. Part of that is the Transition to Organic Partnership Program, which is a program for transitioning farmers that offers a variety of technical assistance, mentorship opportunities, etc., to really engage folks that are interested in organic and that need a little bit of help transitioning. I will highly encourage everybody to check that out if you are interested in transitioning. All right, first and foremost, we're going to dig into some crop requirements. This is only an overview and is not intended to be a full breakdown of every single thing you need to know, but just to kind of get your mind around what goes into a crop operation. So the crop requirements can be found at 7 CFR 205.202 through 207. In terms of general requirements, again, land eligibility, no prohibited substances for 36 continuous months. Treated lumber is not allowed on organic operations. There is a difference between existing treated lumber and new installations. I would definitely recommend, if you know you have treated lumber on your operation, you should definitely make note of that. And we'd be happy to kind of walk you through and point out exactly where in the regulation all of that information is. Also with seeds, all seeds must be certified organic. There are some specific instances in which that is not the case, but in all cases, non-GMO and no treatment on those seeds ever. Again, please see 7 CFR 205.204 for a full description of those requirements for seeds and planting stock. For things like pest, disease, and weed control, organics always takes a multi-step approach to those things. So the first step is practices. What are you doing on your operation to mitigate those pressures of disease, pests, or weeds? Then you move into mechanical and physical controls. That could be things like weeding, squashing bugs, etc. And then we go into chemical solutions. So those would be things like approved pest, weed, and disease control methods. So always with those practices, then mechanical interventions, then chemical interventions. There are some additional requirements if you are going to be doing things like post-harvest handling on your operation, things like washing, drying, packing, etc., that we want to be aware of. There are requirements for conservation, soil health, resource management practices as well. And then last but not least, especially with crops, I always like to make it clear that organic is not the same as food safety. So those two spheres operate in conjunction with each other often, but typically what organic certification is looking at with crops are the practices that go into growing that food, not necessarily how that food is handled so that it is safe to eat. At QCS, we offer food safety certifications as well, and I would highly encourage reaching out to our food safety team to learn more about how your operation can comply with various food safety regulations. Now we're going to talk about a general overview of livestock requirements. Those requirements can be found at 7 CFR 205.236 through 242. This is a general overview only. I highly recommend reading the text of the regulation to get a full overview of the requirements. Documentation required for livestock operations depends on the type of livestock that you will be raising. So for poultry operations, only an organic livestock plan is required. For ruminant and other mammalian livestock, you will need an organic livestock plan as well as an organic grower plan. This is because for mammalian and ruminant livestock, your pasture land, your field and forage, must be managed as an organic crop. The reason for this is all feed must be certified organic, whether that is field and forage or whether that is packaged feed that you are buying off-site from your farm. All of your medical treatments for the animals must be approved for use in organic systems as well as outlined in your organic livestock plan. Year-round access is required for all animals, and confinement is only allowed in specific instances. For more information about this, we'll go a little in depth on the next two slides. So one of the newer pieces of organic regulation that has come into play specific to livestock operations is the Origin of Livestock Rule. So this outlines very specific transition requirements as well as essentially ensuring the overall traceability of organic livestock through its entire life on an organic operation. For dairy, this means that an existing dairy operation can perform a one-time closed herd transition to last 12 months. For that specific dairy transition, all of the animals must be transitioned at one time. You cannot add any transitioned animals once you have begun that transition. And then also, any animals added once the transition is complete must be certified organic animals. They cannot be transitioned animals. For beef as well as swine, those operations, any existing animals that are on a farm are not eligible for organic slaughter stock. You would have to undergo basically a breeding transition program. Again, we're happy to talk to you more specifically about what that looks like. And then for poultry animals, animals have to be under continuous organic management from within 24 hours of hatching. With all of these, again, the Origin of Livestock Rule can be found at 7 CFR 205.236. There's also a linked fact sheet here on this slide as well. And importantly, part of the Origin of Livestock Rule is that prior to any transition occurring or prior to any animals being placed, a certifier must have a organic system plan from you prior to animals being placed or transitioned. That allows us to have full oversight and to be able to make sure that the organic integrity of those animals is being upheld through their life cycle. The next piece of livestock regulations that has come into play this year in 2024 is the Organic Livestock and Poultry Standard. So this is a very comprehensive piece of regulation. And essentially what it does is reduces confusion about organic livestock productions and standards. It establishes species-specific standards for avian species, clarifies some indoor and outdoor space requirements, and overall strengthens and clarifies animal care and health practices. I highly recommend looking not only at the fact sheet, but also reading through those regulations, because that will give you an opportunity to really see what those specific regulations are in depth. All right, and now we are going to talk about processing and handling requirements. This is a general overview, and I would highly recommend reading the specific text of the regulation in order to get a full understanding of all of the requirements that are necessary. Those requirements can be found at 7 CFR 205.270 through 272. Any processing and handling activity must be done at a certified organic facility by a certified organic processor or handler. If you are making a multi-ingredient processed product, all of your ingredients must be certified USDA organic. Specific substances are allowed in multi-ingredient products, things such as certain types of preservatives, certain flavorings, certain food colors. Those are outlined at 205.605 through 606. There are a few labeling categories that multi-ingredient products can have. Made with organic are any products that are between 70 and 94% organic ingredients. Those cannot use the USDA organic seal. There are products that can be labeled as organic. Those are between 95 and 99% organic ingredients and can use the seal. And then there is 100% organic, which is pretty self-explanatory, and of course can use the seal. It's also important to check out the labeling requirements, which are found at 205.300 through 311. There are a lot of things that go into processing and handling requirements. I highly recommend also, if you are an importer or a distributor or a broker, the Strengthening Organic Enforcement Rule has come into effect on March 19th of 2024. You can find all kinds of resources on that on our website as well as the USDA's website, and those are going to be linked below in this video's notes. Now we're going to do a deep dive into a term that you have probably heard but maybe not fully understood, and that is organic integrity and why it is so very important and how you can maintain it on your operation. Going into organic integrity, I always like to remember Fleetwood Mac, you will never break the chain, and that is all about organic integrity. A major component of organic integrity is record keeping. This is something we get tons of questions about from new clients who are thinking, what kind of records do I need to keep? What do my records have to show? What format do they have to take, etc. So I wanted to dig in a little deeper into the specifics of the regulations covering record keeping. This regulation can be found at 7 CFR 205.103B. There are 4 main components, all of which I have laid out here on this slide. Number 1, your records must be adapted to the particular type of business that your operation is conducting, i.e., a crop growing operation isn't going to keep the same kind of records necessarily that a supplement manufacturing operation would keep. So they have to be specific to what you are doing. 2, your records have to fully disclose all activities and transactions that you're conducting on your operation in sufficient detail to be readily understood and audited. So that essentially is saying, make sure it's all out there, it's all traceable, it's all transparent. And then also, it's not written in some kind of crazy cryptographic code or something. It's easy. Someone could walk in, understand, and look through everything and have a really clear idea of your operation. Number 3, those records have to be maintained for not less than 5 years from the time of their creation. So sometimes during an inspection, your inspector may say, hey, I want to see the production records from 2 years ago. Fully within their purview to be able to ask that. So we just want to make sure that you have those records for 5 years minimum. And then 4, those records have to be sufficient to demonstrate compliance. There's that all important word again, compliance, with the Act, the Organic Productions Act, and this regulation, the National Organic Program Regulation in total. So essentially, what that's saying is, you don't have to have a fancy software program. You don't have to, you could keep it in notebooks. You could keep it in Excel. You could keep your records on Google Docs, etc. You can keep your records in any way that makes sense for your operation, as long as all of those 4 criteria are met. So, fully disclose all your business activity, great. If it's something that, maybe you're newer to certification and we're asking for a certain kind of record and you go, oh gosh, I don't I haven't kept that. Great. That is an awesome time to go into your operation and look and say, hey, how can we track this? How can we record this? What's going to make sense and hit these 4 record keeping criteria? In essence, a good rule to keep in mind: if it happens on your operation, write it down and keep it. Now, going back to this term, organic integrity. What is that? Like, what are we talking about here? So, organic integrity refers to a product's traceable and verifiable organic status, having been produced in accordance with these regulations as it moves through a supply chain, whether that's through your operation, as it goes to other operations, etc. Again, records are essential to organic integrity. Organic integrity, oftentimes you can think of it like a chain, one link building off of the other, sourcing organic seeds, coming to your operation, getting planted in certified land, getting all necessary inputs and oversight, etc. So all of those things that you're doing are creating those links in a chain that show organic integrity. And again, traceable, verifiable. A tool that you can use when thinking about organic integrity, whether you're sourcing things or etc., is the Organic Integrity Database, which is linked at the bottom of this slide. The Organic Integrity Database is a database that is maintained by the USDA as well as certifiers. And that is a list of every operation anywhere in the world that is certified to the USDA organic standard. It is searchable. It has advanced functionality. It is really great when you're looking for suppliers, anything like that. If you're wanting to verify that something is actually organic, if it's on the Organic Integrity Database, that is the best place to check out all of that information so that you can make sure your operation is maintaining organic integrity. We're going to dive in now to a little bit more about inputs, essentially anything you put in to your operation. These can be things like fertilizers, sanitizers, pest control, weed control, etc. So we're going to start off by talking about the 2 twin parts of inputs being allowed or prohibited in a organic production system. So that is the National List of Allowed and Prohibited Substances, which is a portion of the Code of Federal Regulations. It's found at 7 CFR 205.600 through 606. And then on the other side of that are material review organizations, or MROs. So the way that these 2 differing sides interact with each other is that the National List of Allowed and Prohibited Substances, which is part of the National Organic Program, outlines individual substances that are allowed or prohibited for use in a specific scope of organic production. So essentially, you could have something that is allowed for use, in the case that we see on the screen here, allowed for use as an algicide, disinfectant, etc., in crop production systems. So the national list is only outlining individual substances, and it is also outlining things that are allowed or prohibited. Inputs are not eligible for organic certification. They can only be allowed or prohibited. They are outside the scope of certification. But these individual substances is what is allowed, or is what is shown on the national list. Now, if you are going to a store or trying to source these things, an individual chemical substance isn't necessarily going to help you out. That is where a material review organization comes into play. Material review organizations are independent third-party institutions that are responsible for essentially auditing a branded product for compliance with the national list. So, material review organizations would be where you would find, for example, this product we have here, HP50 hydrogen peroxide, right? This is a branded hydrogen peroxide made by CYC Solutions. This is pulled from a material review organization's website, OMRI. And whereas on the left side of the screen, we see that individual substance, right? It's not saying this hydrogen peroxide or that hydrogen peroxide is allowed or prohibited, etc. Whereas it's just saying hydrogen peroxide. On the right side of the screen, we're seeing a branded product that you can go to a store and purchase that has been reviewed for compliance with the national list. So QCS recognizes 4 material review organizations. That would be OMRI, the Organic Material Review Institute, WSDA, the Washington State Department of Agriculture, PCO, Pennsylvania Certified Organic, and CDFA, or the California Department of Food and Agriculture. If you have an input that is not listed or has not been reviewed by a material review organization, this might be the case of a neighbor makes compost tea, for example, you can submit all of the information for that compost tea, everything that goes into it, how it's made, what the production is like, etc., to QCS as a part of your application review, and we will internally review it for compliance. We only do that for existing clients. If you have additional questions about the national list versus material review organizations, I highly encourage you all to reach out to us with any additional questions that you might have. And the last note about inputs is how to remain compliant with all of your inputs. The most important thing is that you want to check with your certification body before using that input. So if you say, hey, for example, I have this pest problem, I've been rotating my crops and I've been using catch crops and I've been doing all the cultural practices to divert pests. That didn't work. Then I've been going out there and I've been doing all the mechanical stuff. I've been squashing bugs and pulling and, doing all the things. That's not working. Now I need to go to using a chemical intervention, a spray, something like that. You would want to double check before you go out and buy it and spray it, even if it has been reviewed by a material review organization. You want to check with your certification body before using that on your operation. Once you've checked with us, with your certifier, then you'll want to update your organic system plan with that new input. When you are creating your organic system plan, you'll want to disclose all of the inputs that you use on the operation. We typically ask for SDS, safety data sheets, for those products. And then you'll also always want to check material review organizations and the national list for compliance. At the end of the day, though, that first one is always going to be the most important. Always check with your certification body prior to using any new inputs, adding, subtracting, etc., anything like that on your operation. To round out our discussion today, we're going to dig into what does a certifier actually do? What is our role in the process? On this hierarchy, you can kind of see basically how it's broken down. So there is a government agency, in this case, the United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, a sub-office, a sub-governmental office of that is the National Organic Program. That National Organic Program is what is considered a control body. So that is the portion of the federal government that sets and enforces the larger standard. So those are the folks that are making that regulation, if there are updates that need to be done, etc. But they are the one setting the standard, right? Then underneath the control body, you have the certification body. So that is where QCS would fit in, our organization would fit in. So a certification body is accredited through a control body to offer that certification mark. We have, essentially the capacity, tools, resources, and framework to enforce the compliance of individual operations. So under the certification bodies, you'll see the individual certified operations. So when you become certified organic, you will not get a certificate from the National Organic Program or from the USDA. You will get a certificate from your certification body. All certification bodies that offer USDA organic are being accredited to one standard, and that is the regulatory framework, the NOP framework. In the same way that we, as a certification body, oversee individual operations and are making sure that you are compliant and that you are doing everything and that we are inspecting you and all of those pieces, we, as a certification body, are overseen by the National Organic Program. So we go through the same process of being audited, having that oversight from the National Organic Program. So that is where certifiers fit in to this whole hierarchy of government agency, control bodies, certification bodies, individual certified operations. When you're talking to a certifier, especially if you're newer to certification, totally reasonable, you have a lot of questions. So, who can answer what in the process of getting certified? There's two sides to this. So, there's certifiers on one side. We are responsible for oversight and regulatory compliance. And then there on the other side, there are consultants who are, just as I say, consultants. They can consult you. So certifiers and anybody that works at QCS would fall in this camp is very restricted in what we can and cannot say to our clients. And you can see at the bottom there, those two pieces of regulations in 205.501. And basically, we are not allowed to consult with you. However, we have a responsibility to make sure that you understand the regulations and that you can have a compliant plan and kind of understand it in general terms. So what that means is, or what I should say, what that looks like in practicality is certifiers can answer yes and no questions. We can provide publicly available resources, and we can explain regulations in general terms. Consultants, on the other hand, those are the folks that can advise you on the how of certification. They can give you advice for your specific operation. They can complete certification paperwork on your behalf, should you so choose. And it's important to know that when you ask certain questions to a certifier, if they're not able to give you an answer, oftentimes it's not because we don't want to inform you or we don't want to tell you. It's because we very, very specifically cannot consult, right? We are responsible for overseeing the regulatory compliance of your operation. So I usually think of it like a proctor to a test. A certifier is basically that proctor. We have the answer key. We can tell you if you got something correct or incorrect, but we can't give you the answer yourself. Consultants can give you that answer. So a good example I like to give is if somebody comes and says, hey, what's the best fertilizer to use? As a certifier, we can't tell you. It's up to you. A consultant could say, here's the best fertilizer to use for your specific operation, for example. But if you come to a certifier and say, hey, I want to use this fertilizer, is it allowed for use in organic production? Yes or no. We can answer those yes and no questions, but we can confirm or deny that, that kind of stuff, but we can't tell you how. That's where a consultant comes in and can be really helpful. Consultants are not necessary. You don't have to work with a consultant, but if you choose to, it's great. They're a wonderful resource, and we have a great list of consultants on our website at qcsinfo.org. Last but absolutely not least, here is a page of super helpful resources. Many of these things I have brought up in this presentation and beyond. We have a very extensive resource library on our website at qcsinfo.org, which is linked here. There are tons of great resources, and we certainly hope that you utilize them as you move through the certification process. Thank you so much for your time and attention. This was so much information, but hopefully it will help get you on a good footing to pursue organic certification for your operation.